No, so far. Good.
I want to introduce you to Charlie, who's my grandson.
Oh, good old Charlie.
He's come for his iPad, apparently.
His iPad, your iPad.
His iPad. He's got his own iPad.
My iPad.
Your own iPad. Wow.
How old is he?
How old is he? He has got the wisdom of ages. So he's got since 2448 in the Hebrew calendar.
2004. Well, why? How old is he actually?
Charlie is 6.
6 years old. Lovely. Very good too. Keeping you young.
Oh yes, I'm learning a lot as we go through his weekly parsha. It's amazing.
Which school does he go to?
Sinai.
Right. Shall we make a beginning, a start? We're on the Yudalad Omid Aleph. Sammy, good to see you.
Hi, shalom aleichem.
Shalom. Good. On we go. We're just about to start. Yudalad Omid Aleph. 2 lines from the end. We'll just remind ourselves where we're up to here. Fascinating piece, as always. Yudalad Omid Aleph. 2 lines from the end. And Ma'aseh Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, of course, well known. Perhaps we'll bring him in at the end of the Shiur too, if we get a chance. Rabbi Akiva, we all know Rabbi Akiva. Remember the Talmudim of Rabbi Akiva, particularly this time of the year, who died during this period. 24,000 people died. But anyway, this is Rabbi Akiva. Worth knowing, Rabbi Akiva was a Talmud, main Talmud of Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Eliezer was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, those people following Pirkei Avos in the second parak of Pirkei Avos. Remember, it speaks about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's five main Talmidim. One of them was Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, and Rabbi Yeshua too. But Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus was the teacher of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Eliezer's teacher was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's teacher was Hillel. Worth bearing that in mind. So it's Hillel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva, and then if you go down from Rabbi Akiva, you've got Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, etc., and then going down further. But worth bearing that in mind. Good to see Sam. We just said Yud Galad Omid Aleph, 2 lines from the end. Ma'aseh Rabbi Akiva. This happened with Rabbi Akiva. What happened? Sheliket Esrog. As we moving into Esrogim, getting near to Rosh Hashanah or not, Sukkot, he plucked an esrog be'echod b'shvat, on the 1st of Shvat. Now, what's special about the 1st of Shvat? According to Beis Hillel, nothing. But according to Beis Shammai, everything. Because there's a turnaround, a change, that's the new year, the Rosh Hashanah. So if you're taking your fruits, this time it was an esrog, you'd want to keep last year's crop separate to this year's crop. And you take your trumas and maitot from 1 year at a time, not from one onto the other, particularly when we're working out the years. There are different types of maisa that you might have to take. If it's year 3, for example, instead of maaseh sheni, it would go maaseh oni. So you do need to keep it separate. So what happened? He plucked, harvested, on the 1st of Shvat, an esrog from his, no matter just one, as Rashi says, Peiros Eloi esrog, not just one. He was doing his harvesting, and it was on the 1st of Shvat. Went very nice too. V'nohav by shnei isurin. He took trumas and maestros, and he took 2. And when we saw the Rashi, he took maaseh sheni for 1 year, and maaseh oni for year number 3. Very strange. It was the 1st of Shvat. So he's taking Maaseh, what's called Maaseh Sheni. Remember, Maaseh Sheni is the 10th that you take, and you take to Yerushalayim, or you redeem it onto coins and take those coins to Yerushalayim and then buy food in Yerushalayim. But he also took, because you remember in the 3rd year and also the 6th year, the 7-year cycle, Peter, you may want to put people on mute and I'll come off.
I'm just doing it.
Well done. In
Okay,
case there's
you're
any.
on.
Oh, I'm okay. Well done. Oh, very neat. Very neat. Yes. So what happened? He took these. Remember, he took Maaser, which is Maaser Sheni, but he also took what we, as Rashi says here, Maaser Oni for the third year. Well, make your mind up. He did two Maasers. As we turn the page, Yudalad Omad base. Thank you, Peter, for that additional attachment. Yeah, we're on now 14b or Yudalad Omad base. Why did he do this? Says the Tanakama of this brisa, top of the page, Yudalad Omad base. Echad kedivrei beis Shammai. One according to Beis Shammai. What would Beis Shammai have said? That it's now been a new year. Top Rashi, she'omru nischad shoshana, the new year has happened. Ukava nichneses shlishis mishech hashecha. From nightfall of the that was obviously of that night. It's going into the third year. So he took one for Maaser Oni because assuming it was the third year. Ve'echod kedivrei beis Hillel, and he took 1/10, according to the view of Beis Hillel. It was still in the second year until Tu B'Shvat. Have a look at Rashi, second line down. Yudalad Omad beis. Ve'echod kedivrei beis Hillel. Ha'omrim, they say lo nischad shoshana ad chamisha asabay. That's the Tanakama, and it's fraught with problems. What are the problems? Fruit trees have got nothing to do with plucking. That's number one. It depends. Remember, we always spoke about fruit trees. It's when they bud before or after the new year. Number two, what's this Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel business? Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? Okay, we'll have to follow this up in a minute. Particularly worth noting, as I mentioned before, Rabbi Akiva was a Talmud of Rabbi Lezer, a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a Talmud of Hillel. So if anybody would be following the view of Beis Hillel, and generally everybody does, except for a few exceptions, but certainly Rabbi Akiva should be following Beis Hillel. Why is he concerned about the view of Beis Shammai? Yudalad Omad beis right at the top of the page. Then we have Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda said, why did Rabbi Akiva take? Remember, he plucked Esrogim on the 1st of Shvat, and he took Trumas Amaisras. According to Beis Shammai, it was already into the new year, so he's taking 1 year's crop. According to Beis Hillel, it's not yet the new year until the 15th, so he's taking the second year crop. And the question is, how can he do that? We'll come back to that in a minute. Top line, Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo minhag Beis Shammai Beis Hillel nohag ba. The reason why he took two maisros when he plucked the esrogim on the first of Shavat was nothing to do with the machlokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda says something different. Ella, he was concerned about a different machlokas. What was that? The machlokas, Ella Minuk, third line down, of Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer. And this will come up later on. We won't be focusing on this today, but at least let's see what the brisa says. Hello? A few more people coming in. Mark? Third line down, Yudalad Omad beis. Elo Minag, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, Nohag ba. Fourth line down. What does that mean? There's a Mishnah. Esrug shover le'ilon begimel drochim. In some ways, an esrog is compared to a fruit tree. And in some ways, that's for three ways, we'll get to that. But in one way, the view of the Tanakama in this Mishnah is it's like a vegetable. Really? Continue the Gemara. B'derech echad. Again, Esrog shovel ilan begimel drachim u'liyerek b'derech echad. Shovel ilan begimel drachim, which are not relevant to us, but let's see the end of this Mishnah. When you're talking about orla, going, remember the first years of crop before you can actually enjoy the fruits. You've got 4 years before you take, it's called orla, where it can't be touched. As far as that's concerned, uravoy, the 4th year produce, ulashvius and v'shmita. So again, begimel drachim la'orla ulavoy ulashvius. Then you regard it as a fruit tree. We'll leave that for the minute, but what we need to focus on is the next bit. Ule yerek b'derech echad. This is the view of Rabbi Gamliel. What does that mean? We are treating esrogim not like a tree when it comes to taking trumas and maasros, but like a vegetable. And do we remember the rule about vegetables as far as maasros are concerned? Which year do you follow? You follow the year when they're harvested. Remember, as far as fruit trees, it's when they bud. Once you've got that small bud, not the blossom, past the blossom, you've got the budding. Yes, if that happens prior to Rosh Hashanah or after Rosh Hashanah, that's where you'll decide which year it was. When it comes to vegetables, it's the plucking, the harvesting, which is important. So carry on. Next line of Gemara. Shebishas likitosei isurai. The time it's plucked or when it's harvested, that's when the determination of the year goes. Divrei Rabban Gamliel. So Rabban Gamliel would say, if you pluck, we're not following Beis Shammai's Hillel now. Let's assume we go with the view of Rabbi Beis Hillel. What did Beis Hillel say? The Tu B'Shvat Higia Chag La'ilonot Sam. Tu B'Shvat Higia. So the point is, if you pluck it on the 1st of Shvat, it will still therefore be considered, if it's plucked then what's important according to Beis Shammai, the plucking, and therefore it's that year's crop. Divrei Rabban Gamliel. Rabbi Eliezer says no. Esrog shober le'ilon nachol dovar. You compare it to a fruit tree in every way, which means the following. If, in fact, as we know, the estrog stays a long time on a tree, don't have to pluck it immediately. Bishon Lashon, it can stay a very long time, which means, therefore, if it's like a fruit tree, it's when it budded. So that's why you can get this discrepancy. You can be plucking the fruit in 1 year, although it actually budded the previous year. So, according to this, he plucked it on the 1st of Shvat. It depends, of course, when it budded, according to Rabbi Eliezer. So again, there's a machlokus between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer. Do you follow and say that an esrog, as far as maasros is concerned, is like a vegetable, and we'll need to follow that through? Or do you say, no, it's like another fruit tree, which means it's not the plucking which is important, it's the budding which is important. Now, if you've got doubt about that, then you could end up with a concern whether which year's crop this is. Okay? Now, the second part of this, we will not need today, but let's have a look at the Rashi. 3rd line down. Says Rashi, Lo minig Beis Shammai. The reason why he took 2 maasros, 3rd line down in Rashi, Shenohag bo lav mishum sofik Beis Shammai sofik Beis Hillel. According to this view, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, it's nothing to do with that machlokes. He was in doubt, Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Remember, Beis Shammai hold the New Year's on the 1st of Shvat, and Beis Shammai hold Tu B'Shvat, and Beis Hillel hold Tu B'Shvat. Nothing to do with that. 4th line down of the Rashi, Elo mishum sofik halacha karabban Gamliel. there was doubt. Do we paskin like Rabbi Gamliel? The Oma Esrog Achal Lekito, we follow the plucking, Kierek like a vegetable. And why should that be? Now, I don't know if people remember casting their minds back when we discussed a little bit about some of these vegetables. And we said normally when it comes to fruit trees, they get their nourishment from the rain. But when it comes to vegetables, they are the irrigation, which is done by man, right up to the time of the plucking and the harvesting will be important. Says Rashi, first narrow line down of Rashi, Mishum dedarko ligodel al kol mayim. All the irrigation that's done to it, not just rainwater, it all helps the growth of these esrogim. And therefore, like vegetables, you therefore consider the nourishment that it's getting right up to the time that it's plucked and harvested. Says Rashi, Bahare nilkat bishlishis. It was actually plucked in that third year. As it's plucked in the third year, you go right up to the plucking to decide it's that year's produce. Oy Shema, that was the doubt here, according to Rabbi Akiva. Maybe the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. And what does he say? The Oma, no. An esrog tree is a tree like other fruit trees, which means how do you follow the year of the actual fruit? Says Rashi, the Oma achrei chanota. It goes by the formation of the fruit, the budding of the fruit. Holchu boy, beginning of the line. Kisha ilonus, like other trees. Vaharechonat bishniya. This was an example where it actually started to bud. The formation, the development of the fruits already happened in the second year. Full stop.
So Norman, why couldn't Rabbi Gamliel tell you make a appropriate Tomo the esrog then? I mean, if he
yes, is it it's very interesting. You're saying according to the first view here,
then it's like a vegetable, then it should be a appropriate Tomo.
It's only very good. It's only considered a vegetable regarding maaser, because maaser, it's a very good point. What, because you notice in 3 other areas it's considered like a fruit tree. That's number one. Number two, it's going to be very interesting. How do we paskin here? Maybe we paskin like the second view that it's considered a fruit tree.
What do you mean? What do you mean in 3 other areas? What's the other areas?
No. The Mishnah says, according to the first view, which is the view of Rabbi Gamliel, that is considered a fruit tree in 3 areas: orlo, shvius. Just when it comes to taking trumas and maisrus, it's midrabanan anyway, taking trumas and maisrus, we regard it because you keep nourishing the esrogim right up to the time of the harvesting with your irrigation. Therefore, Chachomim decided, albeit it really is a tree, but when it comes to maisa, we will consider it like other vegetables to make sure people understand anything which you're irrigating right up to the time of the plucking, treat it like a vegetable. Doesn't mean to say it's really a vegetable. And that's why in 3 other areas, Shavuos, where that is min haTorah, we will consider it a tree. But when it comes to just the taking trumas, according to Rabbi Gamliel, in 3 other areas, it's still considered a tree. And according to Rabbi Lezer, in every area, it's considered a tree, even for maaser. So the majority view is that it really is considered a tree. There's only one exception when you're taking maisrus, which is midrabanan. Remember, maiser min haTorah, according to Rashi Tosfos, is only on grain and also vine and oil, but other things is midrabanan. To keep it very simple, as it's plucked, and when it's plucked right up to the plucking, the irrigation could take place, which would help its nourishment. Therefore, we classify it as a vegetable only, and as I say, only for trumas and maisrus, but for nothing else. And therefore, you'd expect the bracha to be borei piri weights. Having said that, it may well be paskin like the second view, Rabbi Eliezer, in every way it's considered like a fruit tree. Certainly then it would be Prio-8s. So we'll have to see how this develops. But even if we are going to paskin like Rabbi Gamliel, it doesn't look that it'd be a problem making a bracha Prio-8s on the esrog tree. Have we finished this Rashi? Yes, we have. It's interesting, this date of the 1st of Shvat. Yeah, I can see you, Malcolm. It's interesting that the date was the 1st of Shvat. Very confusing date that Dafka plucked it on the 1st of Shvat. Now, 1st of Shvat, the only thing we know about 1st of Shvat, it does sound very much like, because he plucked it on the 1st of Shvat, therefore it went into the next year. And the budding took place just prior to that. Do you see what I mean? The fact that this Rabbi Akiva plucked it on the 1st of Shabbat, and Rashi or the Gemara seems to say, it's gone into the next year, although the development and the budding took place in the previous year, it sounds like we're going with the view of Beis Shammai here. Do you understand the point? Had he said it was Tu B'Shvat, I can understand, but this was actually happened on the 1st of Shvat. But leave that aside, as you can see, Rashi mentions here. Rashi, the Ulakame, I've got the beginning line of Rashi. Ulakame Parach, later on the Gemara will ask, again, not for tonight. Im came Peshitale, it seems to be obvious. The Kavar Nichnas, and he goes like Beis Shammai. The fact that he's plucking it on the 1st of Shvat and it's now gone into the 3rd year, and the budding took place in the 2nd year, sounds like we're passing it Beis Shammai. Leave that aside, the Gemara will deal with that point. But we haven't forgotten you, Malcolm. I think you'll have to come off your mute.
Okay, sorry. Quick question.
Yes.
With the following from Mervin's, the bracha, on what occasion would you make such a bracha? I mean, was esrog, was it a sort of an edible? What is the function of the esrog apart from?
Well,
was it used?
Have you not had esrog jam, Malcolm? Well, you've missed something. You've missed something. You want to have your esrog jam? It's wonderful. A bit like marmalade. It's got a nice tin.
No,
but a lot of people actually, after Yom Tov, they collect this esrogim and they make esrog jam from it. Very nice too. I've never heard of people actually eating it as they would oranges or apples. Maybe some people might know of. I don't know. What do they, Sammy? What happens in your neck of the woods? Any people eating esrogim? Neat.
We do it for the community. My wife does it for the community.
What makes jam or just eats esrogim?
Makes the jam and gives a pot to.
Laura's jam is wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Please, Sammy, please remember to include Malcolm on your list next year, would you?
But in the time of the Talmud,
they would be eating esrogim. Why not?
I mean, the way that it's discussed, if it was for mice, I mean, if it was for.
In fact, you can see the fact you're taking maestros sounds like you are going to be eating it.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's not like a fruit, it's not like an inedible fruit. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Why would you be taking trumas and maestros? You're taking trumas and maestros, you want to eat it. Prior to doing that, you give your tithes to the various people. Oh yeah,
so it must have. Maybe the habit of the esrog was different. Was a more widespread type of consumption.
No, the point is this: it's considered the same as any other fruit, other than normal fruit trees. You don't normally have to irrigate the trees necessarily. When it comes to esrogim, you do, and therefore there seemed to be this conflict as to whether, because you're actually doing a lot of irrigation of the esrog, tree, maybe you should treat it. And you can see here, Rabbi Gamliel does treat it as far as trumas maestros is concerned, like a vegetable. But yes, it is eaten and enjoyed by many. So now, back to the first part of this Gemara that we started today, which was, why did he take trumas and maestros twice? He plucked it. Forget about this second point. We'll have to come back to that, Malcolm, etc., and the whether it's a vegetable or a fruit. Leaving that aside, the first view of the Brisa was Rabbi Akiva took two sets of trumas and maestros. Why? He plucked it on the 1st of Shvat. According to Beis Hillel, the new year for trees is Tu B'Shvat. According to Beis Shammai, it's the 1st of Shvat. If you pluck it on the 1st of Shvat, according to Beis Shammai, you are already in the next year. According to Beis Hillel, not yet, 2 more weeks to wait. Says the Rabbi Akiva, that's the top line of the Gemara, he took 2 Trumas HaMaisros, one for Beis Shammai and one for Beis Hillel, which is very strange. Look at the Gemara, gentlemen. Beginning of the line is Omer. 8 lines down, Yudalad Omid Beis. 8 lines down, the end of that line, Umi of Dinon Katre Chumre. And this is going to be a fascinating piece here. Should you follow 2 Chumras? What does that mean? We normally paskin like somebody. You make a decision. It's very rare you want to go like Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Listen to this. V'hotanya, we've got a brisa. Comes up in various places. La'olam halacha k'divrei Beis Hillel. In fact, finally, the final decision, well after the time of Hillel, was that they were going to paskin. In fact, we do paskin almost always like Beis Hillel. That's number 1. That's the end game. Prior to that, before they made the decision how we're going to paskin, besides, as I say, a few rare exceptions, which we see in Adius, and Mishnah in Adius. However, prior to that, says the Brisa, Horoitze lasos kedivrei Beis Shammai oiser, kedivrei Beis Hillel oiser. You can follow, who are you a follower of? You can follow Beis Shammai. That was prior to the decision. Prior to that, there were rabbis who, Beis Shammai, the school of Beis Shammai, the school of Beis Hillel. It depends. I wouldn't say where you're brought up, but a bit like that, until they came to the conclusion how you're going to paskin. Now, we're taking this as a general rule. The general rule is you follow one area. If you're Sfardi, you follow Sfardis. You'd follow the Bes Yosef. If you're Ashkenazi, the rules would be like Ashkenaz. And you don't, if you follow these from Sfard, there's no problem. Don't worry about the Ramah. That's a different view, different place. That's much later on. If you take this much earlier, and the time of the Tanoim, it depends where you, I say, which community you were from. You could hold like Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. They're both, it's fine. There are different halachas, and you can stick to, as long as you stick to one. What you mustn't do is this. In fact, strictly speaking, you could even paskin. Imagine we're not talking about any individual that may not know all the halachas. Let's say you're a rabbi of a shul. You may decide on this area, I want to paskin like Beis Hillel. On this area, I want to paskin like Beis Shammai. As long as you're doing it genuinely, as shall I say, you feel that the halachas like Beis Hillel on this and Beis Shammai, that's in the days before they concluded that halachas always going to be like Beis Hillel. And same with any area. The rabbi of the community can decide, I think we should paskin like whoever it is. And you can change earlier Tanoim. You don't always have to follow. As a rabbi of a community, you can decide we're going to paskin on this, like this Tana, on this topic like this. What you mustn't do is have a contradiction. What does that mean? Have a look at the Gemara here. Beginning line is Kedivrei Beis Hillel. Again, Kedivrei Beis Hillel oisa. What you mustn't do is follow in one halacha 2 kulas. This is a fascinating rule. You cannot have a contradiction in one halacha. Again, If you're talking about different subjects, you're talking about kashrus, you can paskin like one Rav, Beis Shammai, let's say. If you're talking about a particular halacha, Shabbos, you can paskin like Beis Hillel. What you mustn't do as a rabbi, paskining, is have an we're talking a contradiction, internal contradiction here. What does that mean? Continue. This is a fascinating case. You cannot have mikule Beis Shammai umikule Beis Hillel. If you do that in one halacha, now how does this going to work? We'll see the case in a moment. Such a person as a Rosha. In one case where there's a contradiction, you'll see the case in a moment, you cannot hold two different kulas. You'll see. Mechumrei Beis Shammai, mechumrei Beis Hillel. In one halacha, you'll have two chumras. Olav HaKosov Omer, about such a gentleman, the halacha says in Koheles, Va'aksil, Va'choshech, Hoilech. The fool goes in darkness. Elo, Ike Beis Shammai, if you're following the view of Beis Shammai on one particular halacha, you've got to follow that halacha through, B'kuleim u'b'chumreim. Ike Beis Hillel, B'kuleim u'b'chumreim, in that particular halacha. Stop, question mark. So the question we're asking here, this is one halacha, how to take Trumas and Maasros on Esrogim. And we said he took one for Beis Shammai, it might have been the new year, one for Beis Hillel, it was the old year. Rabbi Akiva, make your mind up. You're a rabbi, you've got your smicha, decide what you want to do. You cannot in one halacha have two chumras, you can't have two kulas. Now let's see what this means. Have a look at Rashi here. Horoit selasis. We don't need that. Have a look at the Rashi, Mikule Beis Shammai. Have you got it? About 15 lines down. Mikule Beis Shammai. Well, just to show we're not skipping. The previous Rashi, I was going to skip it. Look, I might as well just follow it through. Horoit selasis. Do you remember the Brisa? The Brisa says we always pass like Beis Hillel. And then the Brisa said, but if you want to hold like Beis Shammai, you can. I mean, what says the Rashi, but Alma, generally you can follow one Rav and a different Rav, whichever Rav you like. Says the Gemara Parchinon, elsewhere in Eruvin we ask, Sefer Reisha, this Brisa sounds very strange. It starts off, we always pass on Beis Hillel, but if you want to pass on Beis Shammai, you can. What does that mean? Answers the Gemara Mashanin, Kan Koidem Baskol, Kan Lacha Baskol. And there's a very fascinating Gemara in Eruvin and other places too, where they decided that they were always going to Paskamai Beis Hillel. In other words, the first part of this Brisa is telling us the final conclusion was that we do Paskamai Beis Hillel. Prior to that conclusion being made, and in any other instance where the Gemara has not concluded what the halacha is between two Tanoim, you as a rabbi of a community can decide, I'm going to paskin like this Rav or this Tana, right? Have a look at the next Rashi. This is a long Rashi, and it's quite fascinating. Mikule Beis Shammai. Have you got it? Mikule Beis Shammai? So again, in summary, you can paskin if you want to on this topic like Beis Shammai before they decide what the halacha is in the Gemara, and a different topic like Beis Hillel. What you mustn't do is have an internal contradiction. What does an internal contradiction mean? Look at this. The Eidrin Daf Zayin Mafarish Lo. Got it? Lo. B'machloikas achas. In one argument, imagine between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, sheyesh mokum shenoitin bo kedivrei Beis Shammai. You're moving towards Beis Shammai in one area of this halacha, lahokel, to be lenient. V'yesh mokom, and there's another place, shenoitim bo, you incline the halacha, kedivrei Beis Hillel lohokel, on that same halacha. How can you have one halacha where Beis Hillel are lenient and Beis Shammai are lenient on the same halacha? Says, look at this case. Kugoin. Interesting halacha. Kama chisoroin b'shedra shelo titome ba'oil. Tuma. Sadly, nowadays we're not so concerned about Tum and Tara. The general public, Karnim are different, but the general public, because we're not too concerned, we're not bringing korbanos or going into the Beis Hamikdash. But if you were, there's a halacha, or if you're a kohen, there's a halacha of what's called tumas oil. Normally, you'd become tomei by touching, let's say, someone who'd passed away, chevra kadisha, they'd become tomei. Of course, there's a mitzvah to do, they've got to become tomei. But they become tomei by touching a dead person. There's another halacha, what's called an oil. If we've just been through oil, as I'm sure Charles will quite be remember with how hard those mishnayos were in oholos. Not for the faint-hearted, I'm sure you'd say. Yeah, there's a whole loads of parokim, the beginning of Taras on oholos, all about the halachas of oil. Oil means if you have sadly a dead person who's enclosed. When I say enclosed, it can even be in a room, but it's enclosed rather than out in the field. Interesting, the whole area becomes tomei. That's called tumas oil. For the non-Kohanim, it doesn't make any difference, except for your tomei. If you want to go to the Beis Hamikdash, you'd have to become tohar. So, listen to this. The rule about tumas oil is not the same as normal tumah, just touching a dead body. But tumas oil is very specific. One of the rules is it's got to be a full part of the body. For example, the shedra. Yeah, you've got the spine. It's got to be a full, learnt out, of course, from Sukkim. It's got to be a full spine of the individual in a room, enclosed. Then there will be tumas, what's called oil, like a tent. Doesn't mean a tent. A tumah of an enclosure. Yeah, if there is a full spine there. Difficult shyness here, but I'm sure it's happening in Eretz Yisrael, sadly, particularly when we're in the times when they're parts of bodies. If there's a shedra, the rule is could go in kama, beginning of the line of Rashi, kama chisoron b'shedra shelo tatame ba'oil. The rule is a full spine causes tumas oil. How much has to be missing from that spine when tumas oil will not apply? Amazing. Terribly sad halacha. Beis Shammai say, Beis chulios. If two vertebrae are missing, that is not considered a full spine. And therefore, if sadly that was in an enclosed space, there would not be tumas oil. It's not a complete shedra. Beis Hillel are more lenient. In which way? Beis Hillel omrim chulio achas. Once one vertebra is missing, this is not complete, it's incomplete, and therefore there's no tumas oil for that shedra with one. So already there's no tumas oil anymore. So Beis Hillel are more lenient than Beis Shammai when it comes to tumah of a shedra. Okay. Now, using the same principle, the rules are the same when it comes to a treifa animal. If you find there's an animal, v'chein treifa, what does that mean? As we know, treifa animals, Yudches rules about treifa animals. The people need to be familiar with that, if you're a butcher, a raw paskening. If, for example, the shedra was incomplete, does that make the animal a treifa animal? We always think of something being treif if it's not shechted properly. That's not called a treifa animal. The animal's kosher, it's not treif. That's a novela, it's not been shechted properly. The animal's shot. It's not a treifa animal. We call it, oh, it's treif. That doesn't make it treif. It makes it osir to eat. It's called novela. It's not been shechted properly. We're talking here about a treifa animal. So you have an animal and one of the vertebrae is missing. Wow. Without all its vertebrae. The same halacha applies. What does that mean? According to Beis Hillel, once one of the vertebrae is missing, it's a treifa. According to Beis Shammai, if two are missing, it's a treifa. So according to Beis Shammai, two vertebrae need to be missing, and then it's a treifa. Right? If one's missing, it's not a treifa yet. So who's more lenient there? Again, a treifa animal. You want the animal, you don't want the animal to be treif. You prefer the animal, you can eat it. It turns out one of the vertebrae is missing. Said Beis Hillel, sorry, the treifa animal can't be eaten. Couldn't be Shammai, you still can eat it. Only one's missing, that's fine. If two are missing, that's a treifa animal. Remember, there are all different types of treifa animals. Certain parts of the limbs are missing, internal organs are missing. Wrong, it could even be broken legs. One of them.
Sorry, Norman, is this the same madrega treifa as, for example, lion is treifa or?
No. That's a different thing. I hear what you mean. There are animals which are not kosher. They're not treifa. Treifa means an animal which is not. It's lost one of its limbs. It could have been in a fight, and it's broken leg, damaged ribs.
But otherwise, it would be kosher. Otherwise,
no. It's when you say it's not kosher to eat, but you can't call it a treifa strictly. You'd say it's a normally you'd call it a tome animal. It's not even tome. It's a non-kosher animal.
But if it would have all its limbs, it would be fit to be eaten.
No, you can't eat a lion. You can't eat a cat. It's not a kosher animal, but you can't call it a treifa. I know we use this word treifa very easily. Strict. Do you understand what I mean? There are all these different categories. You've got a lion. A lion's a wonderful animal, great animal. The ari, it's not kosher to eat. Don't call it treifa. Don't just say it's not an animal which you're allowed to eat. Then you have the kosher animal. I've got now a chicken, a bird, of course. I don't know. It could be a lamb, kosher animal. If I don't shecht it properly, then it's still not. We call it treifa. That's wrong. It should be called a nevela. It's a carcass. And the third category, the one that we're looking at, is a kosher animal, a lamb, but it's treifa. It's defective in some way. Could be an internal organ. When they checked the internal organs, the heart wasn't right, the kidneys weren't right. Huge piece to learn in the Hilchos Shiur there. If you're a Rov, you need to know this. If you're a butcher, you'd need to know this. So again, back to you, Simon.
So sorry, so avela means it's a carcass.
Nevela with a nun. Nevela is a carcass.
It's a carcass.
A carcass means it's been not shechted properly. Could have been shot. Maybe the shochet, there was something wrong with his with a knife, the chalaf. That's an avela. It's a carcass. Then there are animals which you can never eat anyway. That's a lion, cat, dogs. Then you have a kosher animal, your lamb. You shechted it. You're checking inside what's called the bedikas, and you check inside, and there's something wrong with the liver. There's something wrong with internal organ, or there's something wrong with the spine. There's something wrong with the spine. And normally what it would mean, a treifa animal is an animal which would normally not survive under normal circumstances. Its life expectancy would be shortened because it's a treifa animal. It's an animal which should be kosher. It's a lamb, but there's something wrong with it, sadly. Certain breakages of the leg, depends how severe the breakage is. So what we're talking about here, back to our case, let's look at the shedra, which was the spinal cord.
So Beit Shammai is the more lenient in this case.
Yes, that's the point. When it comes to treifa animal, I've got a lamb. Of course, I want to eat my lamb. Lamb chops, very nice too. When they've done the shechita, they're checking inside, and wow, there's a shedra, one of the vertebrae is missing. Say Beis Hillel, what will Beis Hillel say? Sorry, it's treif. What will Beis Shammai say? Nope, one's missing, that's still fine, not treif. Two are missing, treif for animal. So absolutely right, Sam. Beis Hillel there would be more strict. They're already telling you that it's treif. So Beis Hillel is strict, Beis Shammai are lenient. Let's focus now on the tumor case again. Go back to the tumor.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
By logic, the Hillel decision is based on the minimum change to the animal making it treifa.
Yes.
And the same logic.
I wouldn't say always, but in this particular case,
yeah.
In this particular case, they are lenient.
Yes. Well, okay, they're lenient, but forgetting whether it's lenient or not, they're saying that there's something different if there's a very minor change. So if you take it to the other case of the corpse, they're saying
of the what? The corpse, yes.
The minor change makes it not viable to. So what they seem to be saying is that it's more important.
Not more important.
No, they're saying that the leniency is more important in the case of the tumor because I mean, put it this way: the logic has to be the same. The logic is the same.
The logic, that's spot on. The logic is the same. Once one vertebra is missing, it's treif. It's not a spinal cord. So you've got to follow that through in two directions, which means when it comes to the animal eating the lamb, it's a treifa. When it comes to the corpse, it's not a corpse because it's part of it's missing, which means there's no tumas oil anymore. Spot on.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say was what that leads to is the fact that if you know in general that Hillel is more lenient in general, I mean, and there's a sort of preconception.
Yes.
Then maybe that there must be some implication to say that the case of the leniency on one of those has more weight than the other. That there's some.
No. The point is, he is very straight. He says, if you like, a smaller change in the vertebra brings it out of, if you like, normality, out of the standard. When it comes to tumor, it's not a shedra anymore. No tumas oil. When it comes to eating, it's already treif. It's not a kosher animal. So you're quite right. It's one rule. The rule is one vertebra changes things. For the kosher animal, it's treif. For the vertebra, it's not a complete vertebra. Therefore, a complete spine. And you're quite, there's nothing wrong with that. That's one rule where you have a kula when it comes to tumah and a chumrah when it comes to eating the lamb. But that's based on one rule. You with me? Yeah? Have a look at the Rashi, continue on the Rashi. The beginning of the line is Beis Shammai. We are following up here. Michael, we are following up here according to Beis Shammai. We've got a rule of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, where this one rule can be a kula or a chumrah in one rule. And the rule is one of the vertebrae missing in a spine makes the animal treif. It also means the shedra, that means the spinal cord is incomplete. And it's only when it's complete that as a corpse, it would cause tumas oil. Which means when it comes to the kosher animal, the lamb, one vertebra missing, out, can't eat it. When it comes to the corpse, one vertebra missing, not a corpse. But not a corpse means there's no tumor in the area. Carry on. Nimtzu divrei, or the other way around. Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai is two vertebra. Two vertebra missing, only two. If one vertebra is missing for the lamb, it's still kosher. But you got to follow that through. So if one vertebra is missing on the spinal cord, it's still considered a full spine. Therefore, tumah will apply. Says Rashi, Nimtzu divrei Beis Shammai mekilin betreifa. They are lenient. This rule will move towards a leniency in treifa. Why? Continue Rashi. V'omer ad she'techsa, next line, until they are missing shtei chulios. Two vertebrae need to be missing for it to become a treifa animal. But Beis Hillel are machmirin ba. Beis Hillel are more strict when it comes to the lamb. But they are more lenient when it comes to the tumah. Umekilin in tumah. Loima to say, shekiven shechosra chudyo achas, seeing as one of the vertebrae are missing, eina metame. Right. Stop. We've said a Rav paskening shailus. This is prior to the ruling where everybody follows Beis Hillel. Prior to that, and this is just an example, you can have a rabbi that can decide, not just he's looking for leniencies, but he decides we are going to paskin like Beis Hillel on this topic, Beis Shammai on this topic, fine, as long as he's got reasons why he's doing that. What he mustn't do, he cannot paskin in one case two kulas. What does that mean here? What would two kulas be in the case of our shedra? You cannot say that if one vertebra is missing, it's one vertebra missing, it's not a shedra, and therefore there's no tumas oil. You can't also say if one shedra is missing, it's not yet treif. Why can't you do that? Because you're taking Beis Hillel in one halacha and Beis Shammai. If you're sticking with Beis Hillel in one halacha, which is one make your mind up. One vertebra missing, what is it? Is it complete or incomplete? Make your mind up. You can't say, oh, when it comes to tumah, it's incomplete. But when it comes to eating a lamb, oh no, it's still complete. You can't do that. That's an internal contradiction. You can't do that. Says Rashi, if you were to hold in this particular case, Kulei Beis Shammai and Kulei Beis Hillel, you're holding the leniencies of Beis Shammai. The leniencies of Beis Shammai will tell me, oh, it's still complete, you're allowed to eat this lamb. And the Kul of Beis Hillel will say, oh, no, it's not complete, and therefore there's no tumah. Rosha, such a person that's not good at all. Shari Devorov Soisrim Zeh Ezeh. You cannot have a contradiction in one halacha. And why are you doing that? You're only doing that kedei lahokel, to be lenient. You can't at one time hold two different leniencies when there's a contradiction. If it would have been a completely different halacha, you could hold like Beis Shammai on a totally separate point. Yes, Malcolm.
Sorry, just nitpick. I mean, these are two different halachas, aren't they? One is to do with treifa, and one is to do with thing.
Agreed.
But,
agreed.
But they're linked because of the logic of it.
Yes, that's the point. It's it's true, but it stems from one logical argument. If one of the vertebrae is missing, is it complete or incomplete? Make your mind up. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. If you hold like Beis Hillel, you'll have to hold both. If you hold like Beis Shammai, you have to hold both, because it's one. It stems from one argument. If it was at a totally different halacha, for example, all of this, and then you've got a different halacha, my esrog, I don't know, I've got a color on my esrog, is it kosher or not? That's got nothing to do with a missing piece of a shedra. Then you could hold like Beis Shammai in this, if that's what you feel. You'd have to have a reason why you're doing that. Yes, Sam.
I understand the logical issue here, but I'm just wondering about the use of the word Rasha. It seems a very strong word to use.
It is. It shows the person's only looking for leniencies. He's not really interested at all in what the halacha is. He's looking for just lenient. And it's a contradiction in himself. That it's a very strong. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Why can't you just
say it's wrong?
Why can't you just say
No. That's not a toya. That someone who's holding both isn't holding anything. Because why is he doing both? He's doing both because he's holding two kulas. But 1 minute, there's a contradiction. It's a very strong point actually you've raised, and that's one of the strongest points that we do talk about, where the person has an internal contradiction. It's very strong and worth thinking about, actually, when a person says, I've got no money for stock, I'm afraid, really short, and then immediately spending money on extras. That we do find that a person internally stick to one rule. I mean, okay, if you're short of money, you're short of money, but don't on the one hand say you're short of money, at the same hand, right and left, and spend it on things you really don't need to be spending on, and then say, a lot of these points, you need to be consistent, and consistency and seder is one of the most important points we always follow. It's got to be a seder. You can paskin like Beis Hillel, or Beis Shammai on different topics, but you've got to be consistent. If a person's not consistent, very strong. I agree with you, Sam. Rasha is a very strong word, but it's worth thinking about this inconsistency. Things I can't do, and then you can do for something else. That is worse than just, sticking just to colors. You can't do that if there's a contradiction. Malcolm, yes.
Sorry, just to go on about, it seems to me a difficult one here, because the idea, it's sort of abstract. If you take what you just mentioned about, for example, what is coming out of the same proposition, yes. It sort of becomes philosophical. Or I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, I think these sort of areas must be quite difficult, because
it is.
Let's say you've got your logical principle there, but then somebody else can come and say, well, okay, like the esrog thing, that a tiny blemish, that's like as if it was a vertebra. I mean, you can start making equivalences.
Right. Sorry, I didn't really need to. Yeah, no, you're right.
But you can start. It can get all over it can get very messy. So it's quite dangerous.
But I think everybody will agree a vertebra is a vertebra is a vertebra. A spine is a spine is a spine.
Yeah, but if you say that your principle isn't whether it is a vertebra, it's minimal change, let's say.
No, you could then. It's not. No, it's not minimal change. That's exactly the point. I know you were saying before where Beis Hillel seemed to be looking for minimal change. It's not the minimal change point. It's one vertebra missing. What is it? Make your mind up. Is it complete or not?
Okay, so you can say completion.
Just stick to a spine. Just stick to a spine and one vertebra. Is it complete or not?
So then the principle then is completion. So then you can
completion of a spine and one vertebra. That's all. It's as specific as that. It's as specific as one spine, one vertebra. Make your mind up. Is it complete or incomplete?
But they're for different purposes. So it's.
I'm fine, but that's the rule. The rule is one vertebra missing and a spine, is it complete on? You've got to make your mind up. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, and then you've got the repercussions of that. If it will be a totally different halacha, that's something else. You're right. You're right. You'd have to see how it blends. But the Gemara here is just having an example, and here we have an internal conflict. You see, continue the Rashi, you'll see. For oiches, to see how this follows through. For oiches b'chumrei shneim kasil b'choshech holech. That's foolish. She'enu yodea, he doesn't know lahavchin. He can't make his mind up. Al mi lismoich, who to hold like. Now this is the point you just raised. Avol b'beis machloikos. If they happen to be totally two, I wouldn't say random, two totally different halachas. Just because it's the same gentleman, it's Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel again, there's nothing wrong. You're not upsetting him. If for this particular reason you're going to paskin like Beis Hillel, when it comes to blowing a shofar on Rosh Hashanah, you paskin like him on something else, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. That's not considered a Rosha, that strong word Rosha. It's not even foolish. Foolish means a lack of knowledge to be able to discern which one's right. You, if you're a competent rabbi, should be able to make your mind up. And for this particular purpose, you feel the halacha should be like Beis Shammai, and for this it should be by Beis Hillel. But when it's one halacha with two ramifications, you can't then mix and match. And that's an internal contradiction. And that is the worst of all, to have this internal contradiction. You know, it's very tough. It's almost, an internal, when you've got this internal contradiction within the person, that is the worst of all. You know, it's almost like
stir up. Is that what's called a stir in obey?
Yeah, good sir. Yeah, stir in obey. Yeah. I'm thinking back to Sam's point, calling it a Rosha. It's very strong to say it's like internal and external. You know, externally the person looks great, internally the person isn't. We don't want that. In some ways, you know, if the person is what, let him show externally how he's internally, but you know, to have the external face, and we don't like that throughout. We have this idea, whether it's Lashon Hara and all these other things, you know, pally, but you know, dagger in the back type of thing. It's, you know, show who you are. I mean, it's bad enough to daggers in the back, but to pretend you aren't is worse still. That contradiction, internal contradiction, very powerful message here. So in which case, continue the Rashi, a bit more to go. You've got to stick with it. Thick and thin, as they say. Says Rashi, if you're with a tumah, lo choshiv lo chisoron, it's not considered lacking with this one of the vertebra missing. You've got to stick with it, thick and thin, make your mind up. The Beis Hillel, says Rashi, that it is considered a lack. You've got to do both places. What's that got to do with us? Says Rashi. He's got an internal conflict here. He says it's going with the shnia. I'm calling it the second year like Beis Hillel. You've got to make your mind up. Is it the second year or the third year? What is it? Very fascinating. We're comparing this Gemara that we just learned about the Beis Hillel Beis Shammai to the way Rabbi Akiva behaved. Very interesting. As a rabbi, Rabbi Akiva, you should be able to decide. And if you'll tell me, actually Tosfos picks this up at the end of the Tosfos, he says maybe Rabbi Akiva didn't know how to paskin. That would be quite a valid point. He couldn't decide. What do you mean? He didn't know what the halacha was. That's that in the final point, that can't be true. As we said before, we know Rabbi Akiva was a Talmud of Rabbi Lezer, a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, a Talmud of Hillel. So he must, you'd expect him to be following Hillel. There's only one way out of this, says the Gemara. And this is the final line for today, gentlemen. Says the Gemara, Rabbi, have you got it? Beginning line is Rabbi Chumreim, just under halfway down the page. There's one further way out of this. Rabbi Akiva Gamrei istapikle v'lo yoda I beis Hillel be'echad b'shvat omer oy b'tuv b'shvat omer. That is a problem. Have a look at Rashi. Gemara istapikle Beis Hillel, but of course he wanted to do, says Rashi, like Beis Hillel. Number one, finally everybody knows halacha is going to be like Beis Hillel. Without that, we know he was a Talmud coming down of Beis Hillel. Look at the next Rashi and we'll stop. Beis Shammai nohag. Oh, sorry, that's it. We've done all the Rashis. What does the Gemara mean? The Gemara means he didn't know. I know we got a Mishnah about this. That's much later on. The Mishnahs are formulated after Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva did not know whether was it Beis Hillel hold the 15th or the 1st. I know something which for us is very straightforward. We know Tu B'Shvat and we know Beis Hillel and we got our Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva was unsure, says the Gemara, whether Beis Hillel held the 15th of Shvat or the 1st. Now you got a problem. Because he's paskening like Beis Hillel. He hasn't got an internal confusion because, as we said before, Rabbi Akiva, with your credentials, you should decide whether you want to pasken like Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai. Says Rabbi Akiva or the Gemara, I can decide. I'm a rabbi. I got my epaulets or whatever. I've got the qualification, the certificates on the wall. I know how to pasken, and I pasken like Beis Hillel. I've got a problem, because I'm not quite sure what Beis Hillel holds. That is a problem. And if you don't know what somebody actually holds, I know how to pasken. I know I want to pasken like Beis Hillel, but I don't know whether he has the 1st or the 15th. If that's the case, then it's true. You will have to take 2 sets of Trumas and Maisus. Why? Because you don't know whether Beis Hillel holds the 15th of Shvat, in which case it's the 2nd year crop. You don't know whether Beis Hillel holds the 1st of Shvat, and if it's the 1st of Shvat, it would be the 3rd year crop. That is the way the Gemara learned so far, and there's an alternative learning, and that is for gentlemen next week. With that, gentlemen, we close for tonight. A quick bit from Peter, if we can. Can you bring up on the screen a posuk from this week, Cedra, please? Perhaps the most famous Tanakh. Leviticus 19, I think it's 1918. Just scroll down. 18. Yes. 18, most famous of all. Losikum, about vengeance, bearing grudges. And the last part of the posuk, we all know. Everybody knows the last 5 words of the posuk. And posuk 18. Last 5 words. And just a quick grammatical point, actually. Everybody knows the words V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Plenty of songs on that topic. Of course, that's wrong, really. Why is that wrong? V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha means you did love your friend as yourself. Notice, if you can zoom a little bit more on the word v'ahavta, notice where the accent is. Those people are Baal Koire. Can you see the little note underneath the top? I think you're going to have to zoom into a much. There, yes. Can you see underneath the top of v'ahavta, next posuk? Yes. Underneath the top, the last letter is the mercha. Because the way you pronounce it, v'ahavta, you should love your fellow as yourself. not v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Now move across if you can. Press again, Peter, on that, and you'll get the commentaries coming up. Press once more. Yeah. Resources, commentary. Yes. Let's go to the actually Rashi first. Can't forget Rashi, and then we'll
What
stop.
do you say, Norman? It's just the fact that the accent, the trop is on the top, makes it a future as opposed
Correct.
to.
Because the word ohavto means you loved.
Yeah.
The vav at the beginning makes it of what's called a vav hipuch, changing from past to the future. But it does that by moving the accent from being ohavto to v'ohavto.
Okay. Vav conversive.
With me?
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen. It's called vav conversive, if you like, or vav hipuch. Yeah, the vav conversive. It converts past to future, future to past.
But it has to have that trop moved to the end.
The trop will move in that case of the second person. The same with the first person, actually. A T or a to would move. The word itself is ohavto, you loved. The ohavto means you should love. If it said ohavto, it means you did and you loved. Yeah? And you'd have that sometimes. Now, the Rashi, go to the next one, scroll down a bit more, if there is more. Yeah, Gal, that's it. When the scroll, keep scrolling. Peter, famous Rabbi Akiva, just had him in the Gemara. Wonderful. You can press the letter A if you like, just to give us a translation. No, that's an easy one. I should love your fellow man. Rabbi Akiva said it's a fundamental principle of the Torah. Amazing. But what does it mean? Now, I want to just focus on the next word. V'ohavto l'reacha. To your friend. A funny word, isn't it? Why can't it say v'ohavto es reacha kamoicha? Any thoughts? Let's turn again to commentary. This time we'll go to the Ramban. We'll close with this. Go to the Ramban. Thank you very much. Can you put the Plessy Aleph? Yeah, let's have it in Hebrew. He brings up a very important point. What is the rule if someone in the desert, for example, only has one jug of water and there are two people? He's the owner of the jug. Should he give it away or should he keep it himself? The halacha, actually, it's Rabbi Akiva says, Chayecha Kodmin. You actually come first. You can't even decide. As you're the owner of the jug of water, it's sad. Of course, it's sad. You like there to be two jugs of water. You're in the desert and only one person can survive. It's your water, your jug. You're allowed to drink it. You should not give it away. Chayecha Kodmin. So what's this for hafta le reacho kamoicha? Can scroll it. Actually, press the A and we'll scroll and we'll. No. Just scroll down first, please. A bit more. That's it. Scroll 1 minute. Let's go. Is that the Ramban? Are we on the Ramban? We have the Rech. Yes. We'll have a look at the translation in a minute. Elo mitzvahs haTorah. Look at this. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going down. Beginning line is mitzvahs haTorah. The mitzvah is not equality, but what it means is sheyehav chaveiro b'chol inyan ka sheyehav es nafshay b'chol hatoiv. B'yitochim bavuzeh. I'll explain this in a second. V'avto es reacha hishver oisam milas la reacha. Lahashvois avas sheneim bedatoi. Let me explain what the Ramban's saying here. You should love to your friend like you love to yourself. What does that mean? We can go back now to seeing faces, if you like. The Ramban explains, "V'ahavto le reacho kamoicha." It does not mean you love your friend like yourself, but it means you wish and love for your friend, to your friend, like you wish yourself. You wish yourself good fortune, good luck, panosa, good health, nachas, happiness. All of that you should wish your friend. And it shouldn't interfere with you. I know this is also a difficult one. Okay, you wish yourself, let's say, for example, panosa tova. I wish my friend panosa tova, but not more than me. Why not? Why shouldn't you? As long as you've got what you need, and maybe the extras too, you've got good health, you've got everything you need, you should be able to wish your friend just what you wish yourself. So if you wish yourself everything you could possibly need, not talking about, going overboard, but whatever you need with good health and success and mazel and panosa, you should be able to wish all of that to your friend. Not that you're equating someone else to yourself. Because as we said before, with the one jug of water in the desert and you're the owner, you're not allowed to give it away and say, oh, we're equal, toss a coin, you can have it. You can't do that. It's your water, you drink it. Sad, but that's the rule. But it's for Ahavto, says the Ramban, beautiful. V'ahavto no es reacha, v'ahavto le reacha kamoicha. Like you wish yourself, to yourself, everything good, that is what you should wish your friends. V'ahavto le reacha kamoicha. It shouldn't interfere with you that your friend should be successful. You want to be successful too. This point about, I have to be more successful than Murray. No, he should be successful. I should be successful. Let's all be successful together and smile together. Everybody should be healthy. We should all be healthy. It shouldn't bother you that someone else has more than you have what you need. He has what he needs. We wish for Havto le reacho kamoicha. Powerful message and a powerful word from Rabbi Akiva. Our Rabbi Akiva. Zer klal godel batera. And of course, with all of that, of course, it lends so much to harmony and peace, internal peace, external peace. And that's really what we're looking for, particularly in these days of Sfiras Oima, where sadly, so many of the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva died. So there we are, that message. Also, this powerful message, I think that was your point, Sam, about this word Rasha, this internal conflict. It's a very strong, it's not to be a fraud. A fraud means on one side looking like one way. Very strong words there. And in some ways, we're actually calling that worse than knowing externally and internally. If there's no contradiction, nobody's saying it's good if it's all not looking nice, but at least there's no internal contradiction, internal, external. That is something we don't really want. With that, gentlemen, I wish you well and have a very good week.